Greetings, my name is Monty Martin.
And I'm Kelly McLaughlin.
And we are the Dungeon Dudes. Welcome to our channel where we cover everything D&D, including advice for players and guides for Dungeon Masters.
We upload new videos on Tuesdays and Thursdays, so please subscribe to our channel so that you never miss an episode.
This week, we are looking at how to play a Paladin Sorcerer, or the Sorcadin multi-class build in D&D 5e. But before we get into that, we have something very special to share with you as our Kickstarter campaign is currently underway.
Sebastian Crow's Guide to Drakkenheim is a sourcebook for 5th edition chock full of player options. We've introduced 12 new subclasses, one for each core class, and with the stretch goals we've already hit, we've introduced 3 more. But on top of that, we've also introduced our own brand new class for 5th edition, complete with now 6 different subclasses available.
We've worked on this project in association with Ghostfire Gaming, who have sponsored this week's episode, and as we head into the last week of the campaign, we have accomplished so much with the amazing help of our incredible community. We put so much work into this book and all the amazing accessories and stretch goals that we've added on through the campaign. So this is just your last opportunity in the next couple days to get in on this amazing project before the Kickstarter closes.
If you want new spells, new tool feats, and a whole world to explore filled with eldritch terror and dark fantasy, then you should check out Sebastian Crow's Guide to Drakkenheim by following the links in the comments below.
And with that, let's take a look at the Paladin Sorcerer, which in the world of Drakkenheim would be a super controversial character, given the relationship between the forces of the Faith of the Sacred Flame and the mages of the Amethyst Academy.
I'm imagining that some parents took their mage-born child, shoved them into a church to hide them from the academy, and they became a paladin through that. And now their powers are coming to light. So the interesting combination of a paladin and sorcerer is really exciting no matter what world you're playing in, because they can be really, really powerful, both being charisma-based characters. You have one that's very martial focused and one who's a full spellcaster. So today we're going to take a look at what the breakdown of combining these two characters is. How many levels should you take of each one? What are the different feats and race options? How to adjudicate your ability scores? And how to build the best Sorcadin in your games.
There's a lot to discuss, so let's get rolling.
So first and foremost, one of the big questions is, why should you play a Paladin Sorcerer hybrid? And like we said, they're both charisma-based characters, so you do get that going into this, and I think that the number one reason is lots of smiting can happen with this character.
Oh yeah, because when you multiclass Paladin and any other caster class, you gain the multiclass spellcasting progression instead. This means that every level of Sorcerer counts as a full caster level, and you count half your Paladin levels. This means that depending on the level mix that you take between Sorcerer and Paladin, you end up with lower level spell slots than what a Sorcerer would have, but higher level spell slots than what a Paladin would have. Spell slots that you can use for higher level divine smites. So a Sorcerer Paladin multiclass can get access to those 4th and 5th level spell slots earlier than what a Paladin does, and even get those even higher level spell slots, enabling them to do much more damaging smites earlier. In addition, you get way more spell slots than what you would have with just a baseline Paladin, so you get more gas. And if you've played a Paladin before, you know that running out of smites is the worst thing. So this kind of addresses that problem.
And this character also allows you to really explore the spellcasting side of a paladin, which a lot of paladin players don't because they're using all their spell slots on smite. And on top of that, if we look at subclasses, I think an important note here is that we think one of the best options is to pair this with the Divine Soul Sorcerer. Yeah. Not only is that very thematic because you're combining the divine nature of a paladin with the Divine Soul Sorcerer, but that's going to get us access to things like Booming Blade, Spiritual Weapon, and Spirit Guardians, which are going to dial our Paladin up to 11.
If only there was a subclass for Paladins that actually had a little bit more of an arcane flavor to it. It would be a real cool thing if a pair of awesome dudes wrote a new book that had a really cool Paladin oath that actually had sort of this witchy, arcane sort of feel to it, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that would be neat. Check out the links below for Sebastian Crow's Guide to Drakkenheim. So, yeah, there's so many cool things going on here, and I think that as we move into looking at something like the ability scores, This is where paladins always have a little bit of a problem because they're
Yeah.
one of the only classes in the game that demands that you look at more than two, which in this case, we definitely want good charisma. We're going to need at least a 13 in charisma in order to multi-class. We want a good strength because we're going to be hitting things with our big sword, but we also want a decent constitution just so that we can be a paladin on the front lines.
We actually have to have that 13 strength as well because of the multi-classing rules. Because of this, it really drives us towards wanting to have a good strength score so we can make those melee attacks really effectively, because with the Paladin Sorcerer, we're not going to get any of those fun little hacks like the Paladin Hexblade where you can use your charisma for your melee attacks. You're still going to need your strength to be good if you want to deliver those melee attacks, and we do. So for this character, I think if we're going with point buy, we got to put 15s in both strength and charisma, and we need to choose a race that is going to give us a boost to both of those as well. From there, we're going to be a melee character. We need a good constitution score if we're going to survive. We're also going to be concentrating on spells, which means we're going to be taking hits, which means we're going to be making concentration checks. So we need a good con score. So I think at a very minimum, we need a 14 in our constitution score. Either if we get that because we get a boost, great. If we can go higher, better. And everything else, I think we're going to just have to dump it.
For this character, you're relying on those three. There is an option here that you do strength 15, con 15, charisma 15, and all the rest are 8s. That is one way to go, but you can kind of divvy those up. I think, though, as you divvy them up, it's your con score that's going to go down, not your strength or your charisma.
One of the things that we're going to do for this character is I think we're going to play a variant human, and we're going to take Resilient Constitution as our feat, starting as a level 1 paladin. So this is going to give us +1s to strength, constitution, and charisma. So we could do 16s in all. I think for this character, we're not going to go all the way with the min-max point buy, and we'll put a 10 in dexterity and a 10 in wisdom. And that feels a little bit more balanced, at least. And so we end up with a 14 con, proficiency in the con saving throws, and 16 in strength and charisma.
If you were starting with a sorcerer, you wouldn't necessarily need the resilient constitution because you would gain proficiency in constitution saving throws. But for this build, we actually think that it's better to start with the paladin, and we'll talk about why in a minute. But for that reason, variant human, resilient constitution gives us our package. We're going to be starting with paladin. And that's the first feat that we're going to take as well, Resilient Constitution.
Yep.
As we build this character up, I do think that there's two different ways we could go. Again, we're going to be smashing things with a sword. The question is, how big of a sword? So you either are going to take a long sword and a shield, in which case you might want to pick up Warcaster as an additional feat at 4th level or beyond. But I actually think it's better if we grab a big old two-handed weapon like a greatsword and take Great Weapon Master.
Yeah, either way you decide to go, we're going to play it pretty straight for the first 6 levels of the character. The Paladin Sorcerer multiclass build is one of those multiclass builds where it takes a while to fully realize the character concept. In many respects, the character build is not going to feel like it comes fully online until about 11th or 12th level. And so if you have to start the campaign at level 1 or even level 3, one of the best ways to progress with this character so that it is tolerable when you actually have to play the character at level 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 is to simply play a straight up paladin for the first 6 levels. So that's what we're going to do with this character build, is go from level 1 to 6 as paladin until we get extra attack and aura of protection. We're going to get our ability score increase at level 4, which you really have your choice here. Again, as Kelly said, if you want to go sword and board, you can take Warcaster, because you're going to want to be able to have your ability to cast spells while you're holding your sword and shield. Or if you go with a two-handed weapon, you can have a spell component pouch so that you can use your spell components and throw them away, and still have your two-handed greatsword, in which case you can take Great Weapon Master. It really depends on if you want that defensive focus or if you want that really aggressive build option. You could simply boost your strength score to 18 if you wanted to at level 4, but I think the feats are probably stronger.
I agree. I think that this is going to be a feat-hungry option, at least for the beginning of your build.
Yeah.
So the great thing here is that as you're building up your 6 levels of Paladin, you have the right ability scores. You're not really losing anything. There's no trick here to trying to make it work. You're just going to work as a great Paladin for the first 6 levels. And the benefit of starting as a Paladin is that you get proficiency in heavy armor, which we definitely want on this character. So you get all of those beautiful being a Paladin proficiencies. You're going to be great in combat. You're going to have a bit of spell casting. We're going to get a fighting style. We're going to get extra attack. We're going to have aura of protection when we hit 6th level. All of these are really important features for our build. Is there a certain oath that you would pick, or do you think it's pretty open-ended?
We're really here for the class features, and don't forget Divine Smite, obviously.
Right.
I really feel with this character, you kind of have an open-ended choice on what Paladin oath you want to take. Because we're only taking Paladin to level 6, and we're going to get a ton of other spell options for our Sorcerer levels. The Paladin's expanded spell list is useful at kind of filling some interesting gaps, because you're going to feel the real restriction of the Sorcerer's limited spell list. But this is actually going to be addressed a little bit for those low-level spells as a Paladin. So this is a great way to take Oath of Vengeance so that you've got your Misty Step, because you probably want Misty Step there. Or this would be a cool place where, just as a Paladin, to prepare a spell like Aid, which is going to be pretty useful just for your party in general. You're going to have the high-level spell slots to be the one that casts that, to bring Bless along. I really think that one of the permutations you might make with this build is take 7 levels of Paladin if you're going like Oath of the Ancients or Oath of Conquest, because those are 2 oaths that have a really tasty level 7 ability.
There is also an option here where instead of going full 6 levels or 7, depending on your oath of Paladin, you actually do the opposite and you take only 2 levels of Paladin and then go the rest Sorcerer. Now, we're not going to talk a lot about that option because for us that feels more like you're a sorcerer who wears heavy armor and can smite on occasion, but you're actually going to be relying a lot less on your smites with that build, and really you're kind of just there to be an armored sorcerer. It's still a great build, and a lot of people really love it, but I think we're here for being able to grab the big weapon, the fighting style. We want the aura, especially at 6th level.
The benefit of doing only 2 levels of Paladin is that you still get true 9th level spells as a sorcerer. So you're going to be able to get at very high levels of play, you're going to get spells like Wish. If you think that your D&D campaign is going to go all that far, great. But one of the really big strengths of going 6 levels of Paladin is that your character is going to feel like a demigod in the sweet spot of D&D, which is from level 6 to about level 13. This character reaches the apex of its power, I think, between these levels, and really comes online at that early sort of level 10 to level 14 range when a lot of campaigns are in their most climactic moments. So I think that this build really focuses on when D&D is at its best and doesn't worry about, our campaign's not going to get to the level where we're going to cast Wish. You also don't get extra attack, and you don't get Aura of Protection with the only 2 levels of Paladin. So that's the trade-off that you're making if you are going long-term.
Now, with 6 levels of Paladin, and if we went all the way with 14 levels of Sorcerer, you still do get 1 9th level spell slot, although you don't get access to anything higher than 7th level spells.
Correct, yeah.
Now, this is still useful even if we're only getting 7th level spells, because there are a lot of spells that we might want to upcast. We might not want to use those 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th level spell slots for smiting, because smite does have a cap for how many extra damage dice you get to add to it. So just be aware of that. But extra spells for actually using the spellcasting abilities is going to be great. And hey, if all you have left is a 6th level spell slot and it's the right time to smite, then I'd still say go for it.
Once we get to character level 7, this is when we're going to start taking our Sorcerer levels. And at first we're not going to get too much from this, but it's going to build up very, very quickly, because we're immediately going to see the impact of the faster spell slot progression that comes from multiclassing into Sorcerer. We're also going to get to pick up a few cantrips. You might want to pick up Booming Blade or Green Flame Blade as some of your cantrips, in particular if you took Warcaster. One of the cool things that we're going to be able to do with this character once we get our Meta Magic options is take Quicken Spell and a really fun Nova move to pull off is to quicken a booming blade to get that extra bonus action attack, which you could also smite on. So conceivably, as soon as we do have our meta magic options through our sorcery points, we can be making 3 attacks, smiting on all of them, doing a booming blade. It's messy. You're expending all your abilities to do this, but this is something that you can do as like an 8th level character, and I don't think anything at 8th level is really going to survive that much smiting.
and that's the beautiful thing about combining the meta magic and the smites and all of that. I would also look at other meta magics like Empowered Spell or Twin Spell. These are always my favorite choices, but they really feel at home here.
And one of the nice things about the Paladin and Sorcerer multiclass is that even though you don't get as many sorcery points through your Sorcerer spell slot progression, you can convert your spell slots into sorcery points again, and that's another great way to use those higher level spell slots that you can only use for either upcasting or converting into sorcery points. So sometimes it might be more worthwhile to simply expend your 3rd or 4th level spell slot, turn that into sorcery points so you can quicken more booming blades or something like that. Because we're going with the Divine Soul Sorcerer, though, we're also going to have access to our prime pickings from the Cleric spell list. And this is where you get a little bit of Paladin wish fulfillment, because I think so many Paladins would love to be able to have Healing Word, Spiritual Weapon, and eventually Spirit Guardians. These are the ace in the hole for this character build that really take the damage to the next level, in my opinion.
So at this point, if you're in a big combat encounter that is going to last multiple rounds, you can do some crazy stuff, like in your first round of combat, quicken Spirit Guardians, run into combat, and start smiting. On your next round of combat, you can throw up your spiritual weapon and continue attacking. And if you really need to, you could even on later rounds start quickening booming blades to add to all of that. Having all of these options online at the same time makes a really robust character that in a long combat encounter just keeps getting more powerful.
I think one of the interesting things with this character is that you really get to choose how many resources you want to put into a given combat encounter, because Spirit Guardians and Spiritual Weapon are really efficient. When you cast these spells, you're getting bonus damage that you're going to be able to use for several rounds of combat. So if you're looking at a slog of a fight, these spells are really going to support you quite well. On the other hand, you can also use your spell slots and your quicken spells to smite and just put a ton of damage down now. So you actually have this interesting choice between having really good sustained damage round over round or really amazing burst damage by throwing everything down. And you can kind of do both at the same time. You might hit a couple traffic jams, and if you want to do both at the same time, you're going to run out of spell slots. But you can do it in a big climactic battle.
I also think other spells that are available to us that we should consider are simple things like Spirit Shroud could really be helpful here. Even something like Shield could be really helpful, just because you're taking your two weapons. Having Shield as a backup is just going to protect you more.
That's almost the most amazing thing that you get right away at 7th level when you take your first level of Sorcerer, is now all of a sudden you have the Shield spell and a bunch of first level spell slots. It's a huge defensive boost that it just happens at level 7, whether or not you're going Sword and Board or whether or not you're going with the Great Sword option. Just boom, level 7. If you need +5 to your AC, boom, you got it.
Absorb Elements is pretty awesome here too. There's a lot of great pickups and a lot of great ways to just augment yourself. There's so many spells that will help out with your defenses or just make you better at running in and attacking.
You can add a bunch of spells to your arsenal as you get those 6 levels of Sorcerer. Do you want to have some battlefield control? Take Web or Hypnotic Pattern. Your saving throw DC isn't amazing, but it's not bad either. Do you want more teleportation? Grab Thunderstep. Do you just want to throw a fireball if necessary? Or do you want to fly? Or do you want to pick up haste? All of these options are on the table for you. And so you can kind of augment your character abilities as you need to with those spells, because as long as you're hitting that bread and butter of what the Paladin spellcasting is giving you, plus Spiritual Weapon and Spirit Guardians, the rest of what you do with your Sorcerer spell slots is really up to you to customize your character with to fill those gaps. And that's where I might look to what your other party members offer as well to bring those things in. If you don't have anybody in your party that can cast Fireball, well, guess that gets to be you.
As a 12th level character, you're going to have access to 4th and 5th level spell slots, although you're only actually going to have 3rd level spells. But as always, upcasting or smiting is going to be pretty awesome here. And I think as we continue to build this character, really the sorcerer levels all just complement what you want to do with a paladin. And actually serve you better than continuing with a paladin. We really get to dial our smites and spell casting up to 11 as we progress. It's like adding just extra boosts and power constantly with each level we gain of sorcerer.
It's really unfathomable. If you compare a Paladin 6 Sorcerer 6 to a straight Paladin 12, it really feels like the multi-class build is just straight up better by every metric. You have higher level spell slots, you have way better spells. A 12th level Paladin only has 3rd level spell slots. And yes, they get 3rd level Paladin spells, but we're getting 3rd level Sorcerer spells, and we also have the 4th and 5th level spell slots on top of this. We have the meta magic to quicken the spells. Yes, we're not getting the extra D8 damage of the improved Divine Smite on every attack, and we lose out on one ability score increase or feat. But overall, it just feels way stronger.
You can kind of make up for the fact that you're missing out on that extra damage die by the fact that you have access to spells like Spirit Shroud, Spirit Guardians, or Spiritual Weapon.
Oh, it more than compensates for that. Spirit Guardians alone, it just adds so much extra damage, potentially, and a bit of battlefield control. And you've got the hit points and the armor class between shield and your heavy armor to really survive up on those front lines. This character ends up with a plus 10 bonus to Constitution saving throws at level 12, and if you have Warcaster, you've got advantage on your concentration checks, so you are not losing concentration on Spirit Guardians, even if you are taking hits.
I think what's really interesting here is we're starting to see this great multi-classing option in 5th edition that is based on this almost like cross-referencing across all of the charisma-based classes. It's like Paladin Sorcerer, Paladin Bard, Warlock Paladin, Warlock Sorcerer, Warlock Bard. You can kind of just cross-reference these and mix and match them any way you want, and you get some of the most powerful characters in the game.
We've now looked at the Paladin Sorcerer, the Paladin Warlock, we've looked at the Bard Warlock, we've looked at the Blade Singer. All of these Gish-type character builds. I think that the Paladin Sorcerer is the least spellcastery and the most martial focus. It really feels like a martial character that is using magic to augment their melee presence. More so than I think the Blade Singer, which the Blade Singer is the other extreme, which feels like a magical character who is just also amazing at melee.
I will say, though, that a Paladin with Spirit Guardians and Spiritual Weapon does feel like a Gish character.
It does. And using your spell slots to smite, it feels like you're using your magical powers. I think that, again, the biggest limitation of this character really comes down to the character progression of how you're going to level them up, how you're going to fit the ability scores around, and ultimately not running out of gas by expending all your spell slots in one single turn, because I think that this is totally a character who could.
And would have fun doing it.
Yeah. You're going to destroy the boss at higher levels by doing this. Like, you do have on the table with this character the ability to quicken hold person, or at high levels, quicken hold monster, paralyze your foe, and then auto crit them with a bunch of smites. Which is nasty. Like, if you pull that off, especially on a boss, I think your DM's just going to be like, well, I thought that was going to be a challenging encounter. I was very wrong.
The book closes, campaign's over.
Yeah.
But really, if you throw one more encounter at them after that, then it's going to be a problem.
Yeah.
So keep in mind that although this character might be one of the most powerful options in the game, it also does rely on some resource management. Yeah. You don't have as many spell slots as a sorcerer does. You have more than a paladin does, but you can still blow through them a lot faster than a normal paladin would because of the options presented to you. So the regular paladin problem of being able to supernova and then run out of gas still persists here. So keep that in mind as you go smiting into the dungeons. So that's been a look at our Paladin Sorcerer multi-class. Tell us if you've played this character and what your thoughts on it are in the comments below.
The videos that we create on our channel are made possible thanks to the incredible generosity of our Patreon supporters. If you enjoy the work that we do here on YouTube, please consider supporting our show by following the links in the description below or checking out our Kickstarter campaign for Sebastian Crow's Guide to Drakenheim, which is also in the links below.
And if you're wondering what all this Kickstarter stuff is about and what is Drakenheim, you can check out our live play in the Worlds of Drakenheim, which airs Tuesday evenings on Twitch. You can find all the previous episodes right up over here.
And we've got plenty more build guides for 5th edition D&D right up over here.
Please subscribe to our channel so that you never miss an episode.
Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time
In the dungeon.